Well, welcome, everybody, to the Black Wealth Experience podcast. And today we have a special guest on today. Her name is Eve Evans, and she is a realtor, and she is going to be talking to us about all things real estate. So, just wanted to remind you that there is going to be a Black Wealth Housing Summit. It's going to be on June 19th, with this Juneteenth, and it looks like it's from 5:30 to 7:30. It's at Cross Purpose, which is in the same parking lot as the Shorter AME Church on Colorado Martin Luther King. They're giving us a special spot there. We are going to talk about where we can add, and what we want to do is we want to put a plan together for you. And the goal here is, if you don't own a home, the theme is whose mortgage are you paying? And when we think about whose mortgage are you paying, you're either paying your own mortgage, where you have ownership or potential full ownership in a piece of property, or you're paying somebody else's mortgage, where you're giving them money so they can pay their mortgage, so they can have full ownership in the property. And so we want to make sure that you have the ability to have that. And so if you don't own a home, you're paying somebody else's mortgage. We want to put your plan together. We want to put a real estate agent or a realtor with you. We want to put a financial planner with you. We want to put a loan officer with you. We want to put credit repair with you. We want to put insurance. We want to put all these people together in various sorts, whatever the favorite person that you have is, and we want to make sure that you have a plan. So some of you guys are probably what we call home ready or home ownership ready, which means you have all the pieces of the puzzle that is ready to go. You just don't know you can do it. And so we want to put that together to you real fast. And some of you, it's going to take maybe 6 months that we got to put those puzzle pieces in place and put them together so that you can get a home. What I want to tell you, though, is that home ownership is accessible. And I think a lot of people don't believe that home ownership is accessible because they've been told a myth, like you have to have 20% down. And we've come across 13 different programs right now that are in the Denver metro area. And if you're seeing this from another state, we can find them in your state as well. But Denver metro area specifically that we're in right now, 13 different programs that can help you be able to afford a down payment. And usually that's the biggest hurdle. There's some other hurdles, and we're going to talk about that today. But just wanted to know, we want you to show up to the summit. So we want you to go to the blackwealthexperience.org, the blackwealthexperience.org. I'll put a little thing underneath that you can click on it and be able to go to it. So the blackwealthexperience.com, click on RSVP. You want to be there June 19th. It doesn't cost you anything to come, and let's put a plan together for you. So here we are. We are talking about a different variances. Last week I had another lender on. Today I have a realtor on, and her name is Eve Evans. And if you're looking for somebody who can help you with this plan, get you into a place, make sure that you're, it's not just getting into a place, it's staying in the place after you get to it. And we want to put all those pieces together for you to be doing. And so I have Eve on today, and I can't wait to talk to her. I have to make a confession. Eve and I recorded this podcast last week. We talked about it last week, and I thought I had the record button on. And so we've done this once before, and so today it's going to even be better than the last time we did it. And I'm just so thankful to her for being willing to come back on to talk with us and to talk about home ownership. And even if you can just kind of tell us about who you are, how we can get in touch with you, and then we'll move right on into the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian, thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful and honored to be here with you, and so excited about what you are doing for our community. Again, my name is Eve Evans. I'm the broker at Integrity Real Estate, and you can find me on social media at The Real Eve Evans. That's on YouTube. The website is therealeveevans.com. Facebook, The Real Eve Evans as well. And I'll, of course, reiterate that all when we're done. But I have been in real estate for a number of years. I have worked both in new construction as well as resale. I have a degree in real estate marketing from the University of Denver. I just love the industry. I love being able to help people, and I love being able to and guide people towards starting to build that generational wealth.
That's cool. The real Eve Evans, and she is actually the real Eve Evans. And so just so excited. And today I've asked her to kind of talk about a few things. One is what to expect from a realtor, a real estate agent. And maybe you can go into the difference between a real estate agent and a realtor, and then move on to what are some of the expectations as a client, as I'm trying to figure out, okay, I need to go buy a house. how much is it going to cost me to go buy this house? Because I have no idea. How much do I have to pay the realtor or the real estate agent? Because I don't know that either. Because I've heard I have to give them some of my money to be able to do it. And maybe we'll just continue to talk, like how much is it going to cost me to buy a house, that kind of stuff. So if you can really kind of talk about what to expect, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just moving some of my notes here. So, first and foremost, the thing I always like to address with people is understanding the difference between a real estate agent and a realtor. Essentially, a real estate agent is anyone who holds a license in a given state. Every state has slightly different requirements, and then we all adhere to certain national requirements. But when it comes to an agent, that is someone who's licensed. A realtor is an agent that is also a member of a local and the National Association of Realtors. And what's really important about that is that we as realtors actually adhere to and we commit to an additional layer of ethics. We have a code of ethics. We are required to take ethics courses every 3 years. And so we just hold ourselves to a higher standard. And I can tell you, I can almost identify when I'm working with someone who is not a realtor because I have seen some agents in the marketplace do some shady stuff. And you definitely don't want to be linked up with someone who's not holding themselves to a certain standard. So that is the difference. When you're interviewing agents, you can ask whether or not they are a realtor. And the thing to follow up with and ask is what local association are they a part of? Personally, I'm a part of the South Metro Realtor Association, and they're an awesome group of people. So that's the first thing you should be asking when interviewing an agent. The other thing that I would hope you think and that you want out of an agent, but it's not necessarily a guarantee, is loyalty. A lot of people make the assumption when you're speaking with an agent that that agent is loyal. If someone shows you a property, you may have in your mind that that person is now working with you, therefore they're working for you and looking out for your own interest. But something really interesting you need to understand about Colorado real estate law is that an agent is not your agent. They are not required to be loyal to you unless you have what's called an exclusive agency agreement in place. An exclusive agent, when that agreement is signed between an agent and a client, now you can expect loyalty and fidelity from that agent. You can expect that they will negotiate terms on your behalf, and you can expect that they will advise you of material risks and benefits to a given transaction. Without an agreement, those three things go out the window according to Colorado state law, and that agent is treating you as a customer. They are required to do certain ethical things. They have uniform duties, but loyalty is not one of them. Some other things that you should just expect from an agent is having knowledge about the area you're looking in. You want to work with someone who's familiar with the area. If they don't know where to get the information, or if they don't have the information, they know where to get the information. So, for instance, I work in the Denver metro area. I am not educated on mountain properties. If you're interested in a mountain property, I'm going to do the work to find someone, check them out, who is actually living in or near that mountain area that you want to purchase a home in. Some other stuff is just making sure that that agent is working with your lender, that they know how to work with lenders, that they understand the qualification responsibilities and things that go into that. We don't want you to be wasting your time looking at homes that are not in the budget right now. But again, as we're talking about, potentially first-time buyers, your dream home may not be your first home, but making the first step, getting into something, is what builds the equity for you to look down the road at your dream home. So you definitely want to work with someone who understands finance and is going to guide you to those properties that are realistic for your budget and your qualification right now. Another big thing I think is important is for people to listen and understand what you're asking for, but again, be able to translate that into today's market. Perfect example, I had a couple walk into a new home community years ago, and they said that they needed like a 6-bedroom house. And I worked for a track builder. That's kind of cookie cutter homes. We have pre-established floor plans, right? And that's just not something we offered. But they also had a really tight budget. And so instead of just saying, I'm sorry, no, we can't help you, I asked more questions. I said, tell me a little bit about what each of those rooms are for. And I eventually learned that they had like 6 or 7 children. They had a lot of kids. Maybe there was 10. I don't know. There was a lot of children. And so based on that information and based on their budget target, I was able to direct them to a 4-bedroom home that was really affordable. But that particular home had what's called a bonus room option. The home standard came with a 2-story family room. However, there was an option to put a floor above the family room into this huge loft upstairs. So I said, hey, we could do this particular floor plan. We can do the budget option or the bonus room option. And aftermarket, you can frame this, put in some doors, and I think it'll create 1 or 2 extra bedrooms for you. And that worked for them. So you want someone who is asking questions and really trying to understand what you're after so that they can appropriately guide you based on their market knowledge. Of course, communication is a really big one. I almost exhaust my clients because I communicate a lot. And when there's certain decisions, especially, I personally always follow up those phone conversations with an email. Hey, I'm confirming our conversation and your decision to do XYZ on this particular part of the process. That's important. You want to make sure someone isn't dictating to you what to do. You want to make sure that they're communicating, educating, and helping you stay on track and understand where you're at in the process. And then to answer that last question that you asked, Brian, about how do we get paid, it's a really interesting thing. It depends. First of all, it's according to negotiation how we get paid and how much we get paid. There is no standard in the state of Colorado. We can't even say standard commission rate. Okay. But in the agreement that most of us use, it's approved by the Colorado Real Estate Commission. There's a few different options in there, and it allows each individual brokerage to, one, dictate how much they charge for their services. And then two, there's an additional section that determines who pays for that or who can pay for it. So to give you an example, what a lot of people perhaps do is they're going to state their commission rate, and then they're going to check a box that says seller or listing broker may pay, buyer is obligated to pay. And so that means at the end of the day, you as a buyer are obligated to pay your agent. However, in a lot of cases, the seller or the listing broker is actually going to pay that commission for you on your behalf. So believe it or not, 9 times out of 10, and that's not an actual statistic, don't hold me to that, but 9 times out of 10, you are actually going to get your services from your buyer's agent for free. And of course, whoever you end up working with can fill in the details on that. There are some ways where we can see actually up front whether or not the home you're interested in, whether or not that commission will be paid on your behalf, or whether or not you'll have to pay a portion of it yourself. But a good agent, again, will set those expectations up front and not surprise you at the end.
So definitely a box that needs to be looked at and make sure that it's not checked. I know as a seller, whenever I've sold a piece of property, I myself have never even expected to ask the buyer to pay any of those fees. It's always me as a seller who's saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm the one who's making. I've made the equity in the house. I've changed my
Exactly.
you know the dynamic. Like the last house I bought, they say, I made $200,000 in equity in it." And I'm looking at some first time home buyers. Why would I expect them to
Right.
come up with a commission to pay the realtor instead of me, who's making all of this money that is on this transaction? So that has been
Exactly.
expectation of mine. Some of the words that I love that you used here, I love the word ethics. You said that realtors, there's this ethical conduct that has to happen, and so it's really important to find somebody and really kind of check. I mean, you use the word interview too, is like, I have the opportunity as a buyer to interview more than just one agent. I don't have to just, because that person I met at the supermarket, or that person now I would say that you're watching this a podcast with us. I would go find Eve and make sure you give her a call and make sure she's part of your process. But yes, you do have choices. And I think sometimes, especially in our community, we think we don't have the choices that we have. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And one of the other words you said is listen. I was working with a young I'm not even going to say super young because in their 30s, a single mom who has been paying apartments and then paying, for her to stay where she's staying with kids. And she was telling me, I think I could buy a house, but I don't know. My family tells me that I have to have 20% down, or my family tells me. And sometimes even it just gets to the point you get frustrated because the family that's advising her doesn't own homes, right? So she grew up in the projects. She grew up here just in Denver, not in Chicago and Cabrini Green or in the jungle in LA, or some of the ghettos or the projects that you've heard about. Grew up here in Denver in the projects. Her mom never owned a home. Her uncles and her aunts and grandma and grandpa never owned a home. And she's asking this family structure, how to buy a house, because who else does she know? I mean, she just is relying on the people that she knows. And finally she ventures out and realizing that she's making pretty good money. She's making, over $7,000 or $8,000 a month. She has $18,000 or $19,000 in the bank. She has good credit, which are all of those things as lenders we look for to make sure that the person can, be afforded to get a loan for larger size houses. And we start down this process, and she's like, "Wait a minute, I can buy a house?" I'm like, "Yes," because you think about it, if you're paying interest on, and we talked about this on the loan podcast, but you're paying 100% interest if you're living in an apartment. You're giving somebody else all the money that they're requiring, and sometimes it's even cheaper to actually own a home than to pay somebody else the rent. And so we were able to go through this process, qualify for a home. She's in escrow right now as we speak, has found the house that she wants, that she can live with. Now, we weren't looking for that house, if you're familiar with the Denver metro area, and Cherry Hills, or find the house over in Southeast Aurora that's by the lake or something like that. We found the house that she could afford right now so she can start moving up. But it's the first way, home ownership, that I would say the first step to start creating wealth, to start creating generational wealth. And that's what we really want to start talking about, is how do we create that generational wealth? You also said being familiar with the area. Now, I can do loans all over the country, but because the loans are the same whether you're in Utah or whether you're in North Carolina or whether you're in Texas. There's very little difference in the actual loan, or the bank is going to loan you the money. In fact, most of the banks are national banks, so they fund in every state. But when I think about the house I'm going to look at, and I start thinking about what I want, and sometimes I don't know what I want, so I need to start looking. Um, but once I do, I need to have somebody who can say, I know the neighborhood that I think you're looking at, and I think there's a house in there for you in that neighborhood. And that's super important. And that, sometimes I don't know if there's realtors that are licensed in many different states, but I think it would be hard to know the areas in all these different states and make it. But then you can find somebody who really knows, like this Denver metro area. I know you know it very well. You've been doing it for so long, and probably know the neighborhoods better than some of the people who live in the neighborhood. Like, you could probably tell me more about my neighborhood than I know about my neighborhood, which is kind of cool. And then the communication part, how important is it that you're communicating with your folks all the time? So what, is there more that you would think that somebody needs to know as they're beginning this process, or they're calling an agent in this case, or trying to do interviews, or where would somebody start?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, in terms of starting the process, whether you have a recommendation from someone who has an agent, or you want to call me, um, um, or you are just Googling, do some interviews, get to know these people, make sure that you communicate, the same way. I'm a systems person. I also have a background in corporate. So I love systems, I love documentation. And I think back to some really special clients I had a couple years ago. It was an estate sale. So it was adult siblings selling the home of their passed away father. And I interviewed for that, even though I knew one of the siblings very well. I've known her for close to 20 years. Her siblings didn't know me. And so I went through an interview process because they each had their own agent that they wanted to use. And so they conducted multiple interviews as a team, and eventually I won the listing. And at the end of the day, they were all so grateful that they landed on me. And part of it was the systems I use. And as we were going through the offers, I think we had 14 to 21 offers on that particular property. I, sent contracts to them. And then I said, I sent you another attachment. Open that first. That's kind of the organizer. That's my offer tracker.
Mhm.
And one of the siblings is actually an accountant. So she opens up this Excel spreadsheet and her face just lit up. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I was going to create my own spreadsheet. This is amazing." Anyways, conduct interviews. Make sure you communicate the same way. Make sure you all have expectations of each other that meet somewhere in the middle where you think it's going to be a good fit. And then I would say, as a consumer, as a buyer, you want to be prepared to be willing to give up some of your personal information. It's a little uncomfortable to talk about your finances, but it's really important. Even though I work really closely with lenders, I personally like to pre qualify clients because I like to understand what are some of those levers we can pull, how much cash is in the bank. I know your target is this, but you fell in love with a home that's a little bit more. I need to know what levers are available where I can move things around and shuffle and see if we can make it work to make you happy. Um, you want to be you want to be prepared to talk about finances with your agent as well as your lender. It may feel redundant, but I promise you, once we get into the weeds of looking at properties, that overlap of information is really, really necessary. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for money in the bank, for earnest money, as well as your inspection cost and maybe even appraisal costs. Those things vary based on the size and location of the property, but those are typically going to be out of pocket costs to you before you get to the closing table. So you want to have that money set aside. And I would say overall, with those three things, you might be looking at $5,000 to $7,000. But again, a good agent, along with your lending partner, like excuse me, like Brian, we're going to be able to look at what you have in the bank and figure out where we're at. Are you ready to start now, or do we need to wait a couple of months for you to save those funds up? And then the other thing I think is really important is just what does it look like to work with an agent? I mentioned exclusive agency agreements when we got started today, and I communicated things that you can expect from an agent when you have that agreement. But it's, both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
If you sign that agreement with an agent, which I think you should, otherwise you don't really have an advocate in the market. But if you sign that agreement, an agent is going to expect you to be loyal as well. That means that you're not speaking to other agents once you've signed that agreement. You're not going to new home construction sites without your agent. And really, believe it or not, that's to protect you as a consumer. Experienced agents do this every single day. They know what to say and what to hold back, and they also know what's legal to say and what's legal to hold back. You, as a consumer who maybe does this only once every 5 to 10 or 15 years, if you're having a conversation with a nice person, you can accidentally say a lot of stuff. And what you don't know that you're doing is giving up your negotiation power.
Mhm.
And so you really want to rely on your agent to be your mouthpiece, to be your advocate and your representative in the market, whether it's with other agents, a seller, or even on site salespeople. Because guess what? Those on site salespeople work for the builder. They do not work for you, even though they're lovely and they're very helpful. I used to be one. They don't work for you. They're not looking out for your interests. They're looking out for their boss. So just keep some of that stuff in mind. Trust your agent. If you're getting discouraged, if you're getting overwhelmed, agents work as part-time therapists, okay? Unlicensed, but we're here to help, and we're here to kind of talk you through those big feelings you might be having about being overwhelmed or not being ready. Let's have a conversation about that, because what I can tell you is that Colorado is one of the most stable markets in the country you can invest in. So if you wait when you could do it today and you decide to wait, you could be costing yourself a lot of money long term. And so time is always of the essence in Colorado. I want to say it's probably never a bad time to buy. Fact of the matter, we have corrections, value goes down, but historically, Colorado so far has always recovered. And so you always want to take advantage of the market as soon as you can. And one of the biggest things, and I say this on behalf of Brian and myself, is please, 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 please always communicate and have a conversation with your agent and your lender before you make any really big life changes. So, a part of that, I'm talking about no new cars, don't co-sign for anybody, don't switch jobs, don't quit your job. These are all things that can impact your loan and can really put it off. I have a client I've been working with for a while, and something happened on his credit that has now put him purchasing off by 11 months. And there's nothing we can do about it. We've interviewed multiple lenders, but the fact of the matter is, what took place on his credit, every loan has certain loans, I should say, have all the same guidelines. Conventional FHA, the guidelines are the guidelines. There's no way to get around it. So please don't put yourself off and your qualifying off by making a decision, a big financial decision, before you have a conversation with your agent and your lender. And we can perhaps problem solve and figure out how to get around that, to make sure your current needs are met, but we can still make sure we get you in a home sooner than later.
Absolutely. And just to go along with that, what's so important is if you did do one of those things and you did buy a car or something and you're starting that conversation, please let us know because we can figure out what we can do or what our options are. It's really, especially with it's a new transaction. So let's say you went and bought a car from a dealership and it's not going to hit the bank for 30 days, where the bank and the credit bureaus and everybody knows. But as we're doing our search and we're going through this process and we qualified you for for a house, this is the house that you want. And all of a sudden we get to the end and we're a few days away and we go, what is this? When did you buy this? Oh, I bought that way back. And you didn't tell me that you did? Well, now, like you said, it could set you back so far. And when I think about this, and one of the things that you said that was so vitally important is that we are the experts. If you were to go to an airport and you saw a plane, most likely you wouldn't jump in the cockpit and try to start flying it if you've never flown before, right?
That part, that part.
Yeah, so when you're thinking about who can help you, or the conversations that you're having, I alluded to it before, asking folks that have never owned a home for guidance when there are experts, and we do this every single day, all day long. Like I was doing, I primarily do reverse mortgages, and so I was working with an older senior citizen that we're trying to make sure that, and she had missed maybe one or two payments on, or we're late on some of her payments, and we were looking for reasons why, and she wouldn't tell me. Well, one of the things is, I guess her one of her kids had just got out of prison, and she's doing everything she can to make sure that he gets a job and helps him out and all that kind of stuff. And now she's got 3 adult kids living at home. That's all strain on a fixed income, but she didn't want to tell me those things. And I get that. But when we're trying to help you achieve probably one of the biggest, if you're purchasing the biggest and it's your first time, the biggest financial decision you've ever made in your life, you want somebody behind you who's an expert. You don't want to do this by yourself. You don't want to do this alone. And you don't want to do it with the folks that have decided that they've become, a real estate guru in the last month, and then they're giving you all the advice that they read from us, but not being able to piece the whole big picture together. So that's super important. What is it? Maybe you can kind of talk about the process of what can somebody expect as they're going through this process of purchasing out. So they know who to pick, they know what to expect from you. But now what's that process looks like that goes from the time that they found you to the time that they get their brand new home?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I touch on that, I want to piggyback on what you're saying in terms of come to the experts. If you're speaking to an agent that only maybe does one or two transactions a year, that person is probably doing the bare minimum on their continuing education. They may not be aware of the programs or the rules that are changing all of the time. If you're speaking with someone who hasn't purchased a home in 10 to 15 years, we've had a lot of rule changes, a lot of guideline changes, especially as a result of the Great Recession. And so, again, if you're getting your information from someone who is not current on what's going on today, they're telling you things that are no longer applicable. For instance, during COVID, we had a lot of rules. We had new documents we had to get people to sign. And there were some agents in the marketplace not adhering to that. But again, I'm a realtor. I follow the rules. I hold myself to a higher standard of ethics. And someone was in the ear of my client saying, well, you don't have to do that. And you don't have to do this. Hey, again, you want to work with someone who's always following the rules because you can trust that they're doing the right thing even when you're not present. So I want to piggyback on that. Again, thank you so much for bringing that up, Brian, because someone who is current and doing this all the time, they're going to be your best guide. And you yourself and your computer can only get yourself so far before you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
So anyways, I will get off of my soapbox onto the process. So, we already talked about pre qualification, but just to get back into that a little bit, I want to talk about pre qualification versus pre approval. And
Okay.
so, there's two separate things. Once you have an agent in place, you know what direction you're going. The next step that a good agent is going to request and really make required is to have a pre approval from your lender in place. A pre-qualification means that you potentially went online and you filled out some information. You gave them your name, your place of employment, your salary, how much you have in savings. And then a computer looks at that information and says, okay, yeah, this person can qualify for up to X of a purchase price. However, pre-approval is taking that a step further. The loan officer, like Brian, is actually capturing the documentation to prove all of those things. I'm sure all of the people listening to this would never falsify a loan application. Uh,
Sure.
but, sometimes people get confused. And so the documentation that's required confirms it. One of the things that gets requested is your annual income. And lenders are looking at your gross annual income to start. And so many times people look at what they're getting on their check, and that can throw off their qualification. So this is why lenders ask for those documents so they can verify everything on the application and make sure we're working off of everything that underwriting will look at. So again, personally, I don't show homes until there is an actual pre-approval letter, because when you find the home you want and you're ready to make an offer, a good agent on the sell side, a listing agent, they're going to want to know that you can actually afford the home that you've just made an offer on. And so again, it's hard, especially in this market. Even though rates are up and things are slowing down just a little bit, there's still competition in the marketplace. And so if you find a home you're in love with and you're behind the eight ball because you don't know whether or not you can afford it, whether or not you can get a loan for it, I can almost guarantee you they're not even going to give your offer a second look without that letter in place. So that's the first thing. Once that's in place, you have your agent, you should be ready to start looking for a home. And a great agent is going to help you look for that home. Personally, I use a portal. So I set up filters for all the things you said you want. That includes location, price, bedrooms, bathrooms, things of that nature. And then I give my clients access to that portal so they can peruse the pictures when it's convenient for them and then tell me whether or not they want to actually go see something. A practice I do, and I know this is something that every agent does or has the capability to do, and that's not to call anybody out, it's just what I'm told a lot. I like to run payments. I want to know upfront, I'm sure you have a budget in mind. I want to know before you go look at a home that you're comfortable with the payment. Again, we hate to see people fall in love with something that's not really in the cards for them right now today. So I like to run payments. So again, a great agent will help you understand the affordability of a home you're interested in. And then if you fall in love with the house, you're ready to make an offer, your agent should be able to do that for you. So a good real estate agent is going to complete the contract on your behalf, but they're going to do that based on them advising you and then you agreeing to their suggestions or you saying, well, maybe I don't want to offer that much or can I offer more? An agent, according to the standardized agreement most of us use, is obligated to make any offer you say you want to make. But that being said, please don't waste your agent's time. If they tell you you need to offer at least this on this particular property, please don't ask them to write an offer for 20,000 below. They know, they're the expert, right? Let them guide you according to what they think is going to lead to your success. So they're going to make the offer, you'll review it and sign it, and then your agent will submit it to the listing broker for you. And from there, that listing broker, depending on what's going on in the marketplace, by law, they are required to present your offer to the seller. But then the seller has the opportunity to say yes, no, or let's make a counter offer. We like everything else, but we want some changes to their agreement. So sometimes there's a quick signature and sometimes there's back and forth before you reach the end, and the end being being under contract, meaning that you as the buyer and the seller both sign the same contract. Everybody is in agreement about the purchase price, the terms, and the deadlines. Once you're under contract, there is going to be an earnest money requirement. And earnest money, depending on the purchase price of the property or depending on the area, is going to be anywhere from, gosh, 5,000, sometimes only 2 to 3,000, all the way up to 100,000 if we're into properties in the millions, right? It just depends. But again, your agent has access to that information up front. They can let you know ahead of time if there's an unusual amount of earnest money due. The earnest money due date is negotiable, but usually we see it due no later than 7 days after contract. It's usually going to be due anywhere between 2 and 3 days after you go under contract. And then, depending on how the contract is written, there's usually an inspection, but it doesn't have to be. But I do suggest you, especially as a first time buyer, conduct an inspection of the property. Paint can fix a lot of stuff. And so an inspector and also professional photos. You know, some of these photos are so good that you get in the house and you're wondering, I'm not in the same house I saw online because the pictures are so good, right? And so you as a buyer, it's a part of your contract that you say you want to conduct an inspection. And so take advantage of that. Inspections, again, cost anywhere from maybe $300 to $700. It depends on the specific tests you get and you order, but it's worth it. An inspector is going to come into the property and they're going to check a lot of the systems that they have access to. So they're going to turn on every faucet, they're going to flush every toilet to every exposed outlet. They're going to test it, make sure it works, make sure it's grounded. They're going to run the dishwasher, the dryer, the washing machine. They're looking for leaks, they're looking for shorts, they're looking for anything that is not operating appropriately. A lot of times they'll take a look at the air conditioner, the furnace. Does it work? Is there anything concerning? Does it look like it's been serviced lately? They're going to go through the home and identify as many issues or potential issues as possible. They get on the roof. If it's a single family home, they're going to tell you if the roof needs work, right? So they can't guarantee that the home is problem free, but they're going to do the work to identify as many things as possible so that you can make an educated decision on whether or not you want to move forward with that property. And again, depending how the contract is written, you have the opportunity to ask the seller to address some of those things. And the seller can respond and say yes, no, or let's find a compromise. And sometimes the compromise is they're willing to do some of them, but not everything. Sometimes the compromise is, hey, we don't want to deal with it. Can we just give you a little bit of money for closing costs? So again, it's a negotiation. You want to rely on a really good agent to help walk you through that process. If you and the seller are able to reach an agreement about how to address those items, we capture that on a document called the inspection resolution. And usually the way I work is I want that resolved before the appraiser comes out because the appraisal cost is yours. It's a matter of negotiation, but in the current market, it's usually going to be your expense. And that can, again, cost anywhere from around $700. Sometimes you pay it up front, sometimes you pay it not until the actual closing day. So this is money you do want to have set aside just in case. And that appraisal is going to be an independent person going out, looking at the property as well as similar properties nearby. And they're going to come up with what's called an opinion of value. There's not an exact science to appraisals. Okay. So two people could do the same process and come up with a slightly different value. So that's what happens. And it's nothing you participate in, but you will get the results back. And again, if that appraised value comes in lower than you offered, if you didn't agree to pay the purchase price regardless of the appraisal, you do have the opportunity to attempt to renegotiate the purchase price. It depends. Your agent can speak to you about that. If you get through the appraisal process, the value looks good, or you renegotiate successfully, then your whole file goes back into underwriting. The underwriters are now looking at your information again. They're looking at the contract and they're looking at that appraisal. They're making sure that all of the factors involved with making this loan meet their guidelines. That process usually takes a week. Sometimes it can be done quicker. But if you get through that process, then usually what's on the other side of that is what we call the clear to close. And the home is yours. So everything is a little different. I have helped clients find the home that they want to purchase and they make an offer the very first day we go out. Sometimes it's a process that takes us a couple of months of looking. It just depends on your interest, your budget, and what's available in the market as far as inventory. So I would say once you identify the home, though, and you are under contract, usually kind of a normal time frame is about 30 days. Sometimes that can get done in 3 weeks. Sometimes, because of other factors, it may take 45 days. But that's what you should plan for and expect is about a 30-day time frame from contract to close.
Wow, such good information. Thank you so much. And
Sure.
again, yeah, this is, when you think about it and you don't understand the process and you've never been through it before, it's helpful to hear it maybe sometimes over and over again. This would be a good podcast to listen to a few times just so you know exactly what to expect. Because sometimes, as you're calling your real estate agent, he's working with other clients and maybe you can't get a hold of them. We don't want you to be frustrated during this process. There is absolutely no reason for you to be frustrated. And so, and one of the things that you can do is you can come to our Black Wealth Housing Summit, which is on June 19th. We are going to provide some dinner for you guys. We're going to make sure we put your plan together and connect you with people. So when you go to the RSVP on there, there's a section that says, do you already have a real estate agent? If you do, please put their name in there because then we're not going to try to assign you. We may assign you some other folks that can help you through this process. So Eve, tell them how to get a hold of you again. I know, our time is limited and we're going to have you back, but I want them to know how to get a hold of you now. So if they RSVP, they can say they have a realtor.
Absolutely. Yeah, again, my name is Eve. I'm with Integrity Real Estate. You can reach me at Eve at the Real, REAL, EveEvans.com. I'm the Real Eve Evans on YouTube as well as Facebook. And I look forward to hearing from you guys. My phone number is 720-299-8643.
8643. Make sure you are calling that and getting a hold of her because she can definitely help you find hopefully the home that's going to be of your first dream. I'm not going to say it's of the dreams, your dream home, forever home, but we got to start somewhere. And the first step to building wealth is home ownership. And
Absolutely.
it's whose mortgage are you paying is what you have to look at. And so thank you for the time today. Look forward. We'll have a couple more of these podcasts. We'll just look them all up. They are experiencing, but please come to, even if you just think you've got most of the information and need a little bit more, you want to be able to communicate and talk to and be around the people that are. So June 19th, the Black Wealth Experience, the Black Wealth Housing Summit. We can't wait to have you there. Thank you again. This is Brian Arnold. I work with City First Mortgage, and we can help you with all your lending needs as well. Thank you again for being here today.